There was a 6.3 magnitude earthquake in the western parts of Afghanistan over the weekend, killing upwards of 2,500 people and displacing and injuring many thousands more. So let's get into some of the reporting on this earthquake from CNN. The 6.3 magnitude earthquake struck on Saturday, 25 miles west of Herat city in the western Herat province, the third largest in Afghanistan. Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid put the number killed at 2,053 people, with more 1,240 people hurt and 1,320 houses completely or partially destroyed. There are fears the toll could rise further, and those fears have been realized because I mentioned at the top of the story, now it's upwards of 2,500 people according to Taliban officials. Now, earthquakes are common in Afghanistan. They experience them quite frequently, but this is the deadliest one to hit in many years. In fact, this earthquake is one of the deadliest earthquakes this year of any earthquakes in any place in the world. Of course, it comes below the earthquake in Turkey and Syria that killed over 50,000 people. Now, as was the case with those earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, one of the reasons the death toll is so high in Afghanistan is because the buildings there are vulnerable because of how they are not structurally sound. And so a little bit more on that from Reuters. Most homes in Afghanistan lack a good foundation and are often poorly constructed, according to a 2021 paper published in the Journal of Disaster Risk Studies. Structures are either made of burnt bricks with cement mortar or sun-dried masonry buildings with load-bearing walls. The thickness of the walls range from 20 to 30 centimeters for the burnt bricks and about 40 centimeters to 80 for the sun-dried brick structures. These homes can be covered by large and often heavy roofs that can cave into the structure, making them extremely vulnerable to seismic activity, according to the report. Now, it should not come as a surprise to anybody that the most impacted areas are the poorest areas of Afghanistan, a country that is already reeling from economic crises. Now, and the Taliban government is struggling to perform rescue operations because of poor communication structures within the government, but also because of a lack of infrastructure, lack of roads. They don't have the ability to get these injured people out of the dangerous situations they're in. In fact, one of the only rescue methods they can use right now is out of date helicopters that they're using literally to fly into these areas and airlift people to hospitals. But they're struggling to do this at a mass scale and to locate the injured as well. But even if the injured are rescued and brought to safety, they still might not be able to receive proper medical treatment. Afghanistan's healthcare system, reliant almost entirely on foreign aid, has faced crippling cuts in the 2 years since the Taliban took over, and much international assistance, which had formed the backbone of the economy, was halted. Now, many of the organizations funding the healthcare system withdrew their support following the Taliban takeover because they didn't want to be funding the Taliban, essentially. So, Cenk, just really devastating situation in Afghanistan, and it's difficult for aid organizations to provide any relief because they don't know if the money is going to get to the people who are injured, the people's families who have been completely displaced. They're not able to, there's a lot of aid organizations aren't being allowed into the country to assist these individuals. And it's just a perfect storm of absolute devastation.
I'm so tired of like so many leaders throughout the world just being miserable and only caring about themselves. So it affects every part of what's happening in Afghanistan. So of course they don't have right building codes. There's no regulation or anything like that. So all the buildings collapse. So people die, innocent people die. There's massive corruption by the Taliban. So people are afraid to give assistance because the Taliban might just steal it, as that happens unfortunately in a lot of countries. They maybe could add better building codes if the Taliban wasn't so dead set against education. So education is the right answer, and they're brutalizing their own citizens in so many different ways, including by not having an education. And then it did not help that we invaded and then occupied Afghanistan for about 20 brutal years, because now America would be it would serve America's interest, let alone being decent and human and moral, to go help the Afghans in any way they could, because those are innocent civilians that are in trouble. Look, any country, Jesus, man, wouldn't it be amazing if the one country was, or a number of countries was known to just help people? So like when they saw American helicopters and they were like, oh, thank God the Americans are here. Well, of course the Afghans aren't gonna say that after we occupied them for 20 straight years. We weren't exactly, great occupiers, to say the least. But hey, Netherlands, you do it, I don't know, but I just need people that are in dire straits in situations like this to think that someone's gonna come to their rescue without wanting something in return. I don't know if it's too much to ask for out of humanity, but I ask for it every time. So our hearts go out to the innocent Afghan people that are suffering from this earthquake and suffering from both their own government and the lack of attention that this will get from the rest of the world. I wish that help was on the way. And in some organizations will, and bless their hearts, and there's good people in the world that try to help in situations like this. But overall, the people of Afghanistan will be forgotten as usual, and that breaks my heart.
And also just with their oppression of women, they're taking doctors away from being able to help these individuals. They're taking away teachers who could instruct a new generation of doctors. And of course, their economy, because of the devastation of the interference of countries like America, historically, our involvement with Afghanistan, as well as other countries' involvement with Afghanistan, have crippled their economy. Absolutely decimated it to the point where the main part of their economy, the main way that they receive money is through funding from organizations, is through aid, through relief efforts. That was their largest portion of their economy. So then that just absolutely adds to the impact of the Taliban takeover and those aid organizations pulling out, which to some extent, of course, it's reasonable. They don't know what the Taliban is going to do with that money. They don't want to be funding terrorists, essentially is what it is. But that means that the people of Afghanistan will suffer, that when there are more earthquakes, and there inevitably will be, more people are going to die. There'll be less doctors, less healthcare systems for them to be taken care of. And every time an incident like this happens, they're going to have less and less resources to do rescue operations, which are already abysmal. And they're not letting in these outside groups who do have the resources, who might be able to better do these rescue operations. So, like I said at the beginning, it's just a perfect storm. And a lot of the blame falls on the Taliban, but a lot of the blame also falls on the United States for crippling the economy of this nation and creating the circumstances that led to what we're seeing today.
And by the way, Russia before it, and all the empires that have invaded Afghanistan and subjected their people to nonstop wars. And then finally, I want to go back to the Taliban and how much I loathe fundamentalists. And I know the feeling is mutual. To both the points that Rayyvana and I made, so if you liberated half of your population, the women, you'd have more doctors, you'd have more engineers, you'd have more business people, you'd have a healthier, stronger economy. You would be a stronger, better nation in every way. For God's sake, the answer is not fundamentalism. Science and rationality and logic is the answer.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.